Hello and welcome to a series of online conversations from Hitachi Vantara, during which we'll be discussing how companies are accelerating their cloud and digital strategies, which enable them to deliver exceptional digital experiences for their customers, allowing them to interact with the business anytime and anywhere. A desire for greater flexibility, efficiency and cost savings is driving organizations to rethink their approach to technology delivery. The result is hybrid cloud focused and as a service based. By reducing the need to own IT equipment and maintain technology in-house, organizations are freeing up resources to transform the way they operate IT and deliver new services, all of which has implications for an organization's culture and skill set demands. In this, the first in a series of discussions, Hitachi Vantara's Tom Christensen will make the case for a modernize digital core philosophy, and he'll explain how this everything as a service model works in practical terms and how it applies to application, data and infrastructure modernization, and what that means for the IT department in the short, medium and long term. You can ask questions or leave comments in the discussion area of the session, and you'll also find links to additional resources related to the discussion today. Over the coming weeks, we'll be inviting guests to discuss and explore some of these areas in more details. But for the moment, let me hand you over to Tom and your host, John Bernstein.
Richard, thanks very much. And as Richard said, delighted to be joined by Tom Christensen. Tom, let's start with the broad understanding of the concept, modernizing the core. What do you mean by modernizing the core?
Yeah, so when we talk about modernizing the core, we are looking at the current data center that customers they have. And in the current data center, we find different things like infrastructure. And infrastructure modernization is about having a look at server storage and network and how you can make that more agile and maybe also more intelligent in the way that it is running. And then we have data as the second one. Data modernization is another really hot topic. How do you reach out to all the data that you got in your data center from edge core to cloud? And how can you set up that management and automation and the right governance around your data? And then, of course, there is the application modernization going on. We are having a monolith application architecture, and we're moving into more like a distributed architecture. And that kind of shift, how do you modernize that application to be part of that new world and give that service back to line of business? But if we circle back to what we call infrastructure, and we look a little bit about how you can modernize the infrastructure, we see different paths that CIOs are taking. Some are looking at hiring an automation architect that is not looking at the tool itself, but more like the process, and would like to automate that intelligent infrastructure. You can do that in many different ways. You can look at the way that you're doing it today, and maybe you are opportunistic in the way you do it. Then you do it more wisely, then you do it more essential, and then you end up with more strategic automation of your data center. And this is a kind of a journey that you do. So you take an kind of a storage system like a device. Is that able to be an intelligent device? Can it monitor itself? Can it do self-healing? Can it come up with recommendation? Can it actually change parameters while it's running because it has a really tough workload coming down? Can it stop some jobs and put them into a post job and then execute and deliver the performance and switch back again and stuff like that? And how can you, in that process, tie everything together to automate it in a more agnostic way, and maybe even take it out to first line of support that might run some sort of an ITSM tool with ServiceNow. So you can simply spin up service when line of business needed, directly from first line of support. This is one way of doing it. But during COVID-19, we have seen that some CIOs are beginning to turn around and look at as a service for delivering that kind of automation. So in the as a service, what you get is a kind of a private cloud, which is a building block that you put in your data center that can deliver the outcome that you need, the service that you need in your organization. And in here, you get consolidation, you get optimization, and you get automation. And that will, in some cases, remove the pressure on the CIO to modernize the infrastructure.
Very good, Tom. And you mentioned the as-a-service model and the benefits similar to the as-a-service model. Why do you make that comparison?
So why do we make that comparison with as-a-service? I mean, when we do these roundtables, and we've done quite a lot of roundtables this year, I've been talking and hosting more than 200 CIOs in 15 roundtables. And some of the feedback we sometimes get is that line of business is looking at us as old legacy. Line of business now got other kinds of opportunities. They can go out to public cloud and they can spin up a service immediately. But when they look at internal IT, it's not that fast in the way that it delivers the service. So there is a pressure on CIOs to look at how can I modernize the core, my data center, my infrastructure, and maybe even turn it around a little bit and be more focused on the service than actually operate and manage infrastructure. So in here, some are looking at repeatable service, like just spin up a virtual machine or just spin up some capacity or just spin up a kind of a container and I can move it between cloud vendors and take it in-house if I need that one. And other CIOs are looking more at a tailor-made solution, more like, something that is focused on what they need and the outcome. And there are, different ways of doing this as a service, but this is what we see at the moment.
And when I start to think about the motivations behind doing all of this, does it come down to cost alone?
Well, I guess cost is very often something that comes up, and it is definitely an element when you talk about as a service. But in many cases, what people are talking about here is public cloud, and the service I get is really good. And yes, I can get it fast. And yes, it makes sense in some cases. It's really relevant for a line of business. But there are also some concerns around it, like security is a concern, cost is a concern, performance is a concern. It's always faster to run it very close with the application on-prem. And manageability of what you have is something that you also need, and help for data migration. As some are saying, I can easily spin up capacity in cloud, but moving a petabyte out to cloud is adding complexity to the culture and the organization, because we basically need that cloud architect to help us on doing that. So I would say, those 5 topics are something that comes up, but cost is always something that people are looking at. And the value of that is basically that you can lower the total cost of ownership. And we in Hitachi, we have done more than 1,200 assessments across the many customers worldwide. And the insight we got from all these assessments is that the current utilization you have in your data center is actually quite low. So when you buy a product, you often buy the product, but you also buy your expected need the next 3 to 4 years out in the future. And for that reason, you have a lot of resources that you're not utilizing. And just by moving into as a service model with a private cloud, there you can actually drive down the cost. So this is definitely one of the benefit that we see. And in average, it's around 33% of cost reduction you do by simply moving from what we're doing today into a private cloud that you have in your data center. And that one will take care about security, cost, performance, manageability, and help to some of the data migration that you can continue to use the process that you used for many years in the data center.
That's great. As we know, Tom, as a service comes in many flavors. So I just wonder if you can give me some practical examples of how this might be applied. I'm thinking about a progressive, outward-looking organization going through some transformation.
Yeah, so what we see here is that when we do all these kind of as a service, this is actually not a new thing. It's something that happens back in the late 60s, where the mainframe came out. And at that time, we realized that some enterprise customers, they could afford to buy a mainframe and get the value out of that technology, get the advancement and move the business to be more competitive. But smaller business and medium-sized business couldn't really afford to buy that mainframe. So at that time, they invented something called time-sharing system. And this is basically something that has a very strong focus on the outcome. How can I get access to the mainframe, to the technology, to get the advancement I need to help my line of business to stay more competitive in the market? And that kind of as a service has changed over the years. And what we know right now and what we see as a service is something where I can buy infrastructure as a service, I can buy Oracle as a service, I can buy SAP as a service, virtual machine containers, backup as a service, and so on. Something that is running in my data center, but really focus on the outcome. And this is where we help customers, get exactly what they need to help them be relevant for line of business. But we are also seeing a new generation of as a service coming up. And that new generation is more like, I get this portal in cloud, I log in and I spin up my virtual machine, or I spin up my capacity and I get access to that. But this is more like repeatable things that you get. I get capacity and I get it every time. It's the same one I get and I get it immediately. In that new world, the things are changing a little bit as well regarding to new features and functions that are constantly being added to these kind of products going forward. So this is a new generation, and over the next 3 to 4 years, that one will develop and give another alternative to the more traditional as a service we have seen.
So Tom, I just wonder where this leaves the IT department. I guess that an IT department with no hardware to manage is fundamentally a legacy function.
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. I would say, IT has a great future. So there is a lot of opportunities just around the corner. We need to remind ourselves that IT sector is a growing sector. It's not a declining one. Even in COVID-19, it has been growing and people are spending more money on IT, and they know that IT is the kind of tool that can bring them into the future and make them more relevant in the market. So the IT department just need to look at themselves and say, now is the time that I need to expand my capabilities beyond what I've been doing for many years. This is not going away, what we have been doing. We will still have mainframe, we will still have Unix systems, we will still have some legacy systems that will continue, but now we also got private cloud, and now we also got public cloud, and we, to some extent, also got the edge. So this one is a great opportunity to actually get some more training, jump on the wagon, and try some of these things out, whether you want to be an expert in the edge or in the cloud or private cloud, or just have a more and stronger focus on service and maybe a more integration into line of business and understand their problems and what kind of service they need. I basically see it as a great opportunity to take it to the next level.
And you've kind of touched on this already, but I'll pose the question anyhow. How must senior IT leaders rise to this challenge?
Well, I've been speaking to a wide range of CIOs in the last 7 months, as we spoke about before, from all these kind of roundtables that we are doing. And one of the things that they are concerned about is, how do I get IT better? How do I get it more optimized? How do I get it more agile? How do I get more and stronger control over the economic part of the data center? And what kind of skill sets do I need in my organization to embark on that journey into private cloud and public cloud, hybrid cloud, distributed cloud? And in some cases, some people are talking about a floating data center from edge, core to cloud. How do I embrace that? And what skill sets do I need? And how can I make IT more relevant for line of business? We still have to remind ourselves that CIOs are only here because they are giving a good service to line of business. And when line of business are requiring a new kind of skill sets or new kind of service, that will change the application architecture, which will eventually change the data center as well, because we need to fulfill these demands. And that one, I think, is important that we keep reminding ourselves about that one.
And you mentioned skill set a couple of times in your answer. What are those skills that will be required in the future?
Yeah, so if you look at different kind of leading analyst companies, and there are many out there, 451, there's Gartner, there's IDC and Forrester and many more. And if you read all these reports and you try to understand where is the market going, this is something I think is really interesting. And I spend a lot of time trying to catch up and talk to these people to understand what is going on in the market. There are trends saying that some of the job roles we have had in the data center for the last 30 years, like engineering, doing patching of infrastructure and putting wires and stuff like that up. That kind of job role is changing, as well as those that are managing storage, server and network and virtual machines and stuff like that. These job roles are beginning to move into what we call hybrid IT, where you basically have to be able to do what you've been doing for many years, but you also need to be able to cover private cloud and public cloud in that hybrid role, so you can create exactly that service that the line of business is requiring. Some are actually estimating that by 2025, it's up to 70% that will change job roles to different jobs than they are doing today. So this is a great opportunity to jump on the skill sets and define, where would I like to build up my expertise? Where would I like to add value to the company that I'm working for going forward?
And so what does this shift mean for culture as well? Does the culture internally have to change? And if it has to change, how does it have to change?
Yeah, based on the conversation we are having with CIOs, and when we start up a discussion about as a service, it seems quite easy for some CIOs just to make a click and then order some repeatable service, and then I get access to it and then I can use it. But in reality, when you start thinking about it, you realize that 1/3 is about, the private cloud and public cloud and the technology thing that you need to master and have in place. And there are contracts around that one, and where should my workload run and stuff like that. Another third is around the skill set we just spoke about. How do I basically make sure that I have the right training and I give people the training they need, and in what direction should they go? And then there is the culture shift. And this one is the last third of that change into as a service. So in here, you need to take care about the culture, because people react very different to changes. And some people, they only follow a leader if he shows the way going forward, saying, this is the way we want to go as an organization. And that leader is strong to motivate people. And once you motivate people to do that, they get, the right feeling, and they are ready to jump on that skill set, and they are ready to begin to work with that. But it really demands a strong leader to change the culture in an organization. And it's basically because people react very differently. Some take changes positively, others look at it as a negative thing. I don't want to do this. I want to do what I'm doing the last 10 years. I'm an expert, spend so many hours on training and education. I want to stick with that one. But here you need a leader to motivate these people to see the future and to see the opportunity and lay out that training that you need to go into that as a service, because it is a different role. But it's still important to have these people, because you hired these people maybe 5-10 years ago because of a reason. And that reason is something you want to take with you into the hybrid IT role and build and expand their capabilities to help you become more successful in front of line of business.
Now, Tom, in future episodes, future discussions that we have, we're going to talk in much more detail about the impact on modernizing the core on applications and on data. I don't want to get into a deep conversation in both of those subjects, but what would be really interesting is to just get a flavor of the impact both on applications and data. So perhaps we can start with the first of those two, on applications.
Yeah, I think that one could be quite interesting. And I think the application one, let's start with that one first. You might ask the question, why do we need to change these applications in the first place? I mean, what is the objective and why do we need to do it? I mean, we've done monolith applications for the last 30 years and they are really proven and resilient and they run really good in that data center and you get, high performance out of it. But suddenly, when line of business is knocking at the door at the CIO and he is putting in a cloud first strategy, I want that one because I want to use public cloud. When that hits the table, the CIOs can say, okay, you can just spin it up and use it. That's really good. But then you realize that, no, that's not really the case, because then he will knock at the door from line of business and he say, I want to be more competitive in the market. When we put a product into the market or a service in this company here, I want to understand how people are using that product. But I also would like to give them some guidance. So what I need is something that can run at the edge to understand when people, they buy the product, put them into their home or into their factory or into their business, how do they use that product? And I want to give them an opportunity to download an app so we can reach out to them and give them guidance to explain what they should do. And we see all sorts of requirements coming in that direction. And when that hits the table, the CIO cannot stick to the monolith application anymore because he can't take a bare metal and put out together with his mobile phone or with another product that he is selling. It's not possible. And you can't even take a virtual machine. You need to think out of the box here and say, okay, I got the monolith application, but now I need a distributed application architecture as well. I need something light running out there like a container with an intelligent edge that can, sense, inference, and act and give me information. And I need to be able to create an app you can download and give visibility into the product that you're using. So if you're distributing power, you are using an old legacy infrastructure, which has been here for maybe 30, maybe 40 years. How do you digitalize such a product? Well, you could basically have something running at the edge, at the transformer station, at the road, understanding when you're using power. And you can give an app to customers saying, when you turn on your washing machine, you're using black or green energy right now. And you can help people make the right decision. This is what makes the business more competitive going forward. When you take what you've been doing and you add some insights to data and you add a distributed application on top. So two things: you modernize your legacy application to have cloud first strategy, use cloud where you can be value adding with some of that capability, or move the application into cloud, or you look at this distributed application architecture that you can create for a line of business. And this is actually why CIOs have a pressure and need to look more at the outcome and the service and look at as a service to help them on that journey.
So that's applications. Similarly, what does the modernize the core approach mean for data?
Yeah, data is maybe an even bigger topic, because when we talk about these new distributed application and be more competitive, we're suddenly beginning to understand that insights to data is really key to have a data-driven organization. If you don't have insights to data, it's very difficult to build that solution we just spoke about before. So you need to modernize exactly that part of the data center as well. Here you have centralized data, you have decentralized data, you have questions like, how do I connect and collect? What pipelines do I set up? Can I use AI for scale? Where do I save all that data? Should I leave it at the edge or decentralized, or should I take it in on a data lake? Should I have it on a data platform? Should I look at metadata, index, search capability? Can I set up a kind of a dashboard, maybe even use ServiceNow, as we spoke about before, to give access to different data sets for product owners, for marketing, for maybe internal investigation or compliance officers? And there is so many things to talk about to get, the right governance around your data. And I think that one can take at least an hour to talk about all these different things that you need to think about, not ending up with a data swamp in your data lake, but end up with the right data quality as well. How do I put content around data so I don't misunderstand it, but I really understand the data that I got in my in my environment? These are some of the questions that pops up when we start having conversation about data modernization.
Okay, so there's a challenge, Tom, to talk about data in under 60 minutes. We'll see what we can do in the coming weeks. Before we leave each other for this episode, just a word of advice, really. What should IT leaders do next? How should they prepare for this everything as a service shift?
I think the culture and the skill set is going to be the CIO's best friend when he go into as a service. So this is definitely something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done correctly. But then I would say, when you go into that kind of thought, well, you're looking for cloud-like features, cloud-like economics that you want to set up, but you should never, ever forget the outcome. The outcome is the most important one. It happened and it was born in the late 60s with the mainframe, and it is still today the outcome that makes the difference. So have a strong focus on that one. And yes, you can buy repeatable service like storage, and you can buy it like virtual machines and containers and stuff like that. But in some cases, you need to take it a step further up and look at how can I deliver that SAP service, Oracle service, and maybe a better service around data when you create these as a service. The outcome is the key one. And this is where you need a player that can help you with that outcome to make it successful for you.
Very good. So Tom, as always, thank you for your insights. I'm looking forward to getting into the detail of this over the coming weeks and the future episodes. Thank you, Tom. Thank you all very much for watching.